Welcome to One-on-One. I'm Steve Adebato. Every once in a while there's a story, a powerful story that you may not know about, but you need to know about it. And I'll tell you what, the young lady you're about to meet is the one who has told that story with a group of extraordinary colleagues. She is Noemi Figueroa Soulet. She's the producer, director, writer of the Borinqueneers. And they were a group. The 65th Infantry was the only Hispanic segregated unit in the Army, mandated by the United States Congress. The 65th have an incredible story. They fought, they were persecuted, they were discriminated against. This government has a lot of explaining to do, and Noemi is here to tell us that story and why you, no matter where you live on the East Coast, need to know about the 65th. Stay with us, we'll be right back. What a documentary, and it was produced, directed, and written by Noemi Figueroa Soulet. Good to see you. Tell us the story about the Borinqueneers. Why is this so special, this documentary?
Well, it's another chapter of American history.
Who are these guys? Who were these guys?
Well, they were U.S. citizens,
right,
with a foreign language and a foreign culture, who served. Many of them volunteered. Many of them were drafted.
Were they segregated?
They were officially, as mandated by Congress, a segregated unit.
As whom? Like, just if you're Hispanic?
Puerto Rican.
Puerto Rican.
Well, they started as a native volunteer troops to safeguard the island. And over the years...
Puerto Rico.
Right. When the U.S. took over the island in 1898, in 1899, the origins of the 65th began in 1899. And then they participated for the first time going out of the island. They were sent to the Panama Canal to do guard duty. But as most segregated units back then, there was very little combat. They were sent during World War II to Europe, but they were mostly assigned to security missions, and they saw very little combat. But in Korea, they saw a lot of combat, and they were used extensively.
So what makes this so special? Because what's interesting is they were eligible to fight, but not eligible
Yeah, when you say eligible to fight, they could be drafted.
They could be drafted.
Yeah, they were.
And they were.
Right. They couldn't vote for the commander-in-chief, but they could be, they were obligated to serve under compulsory mandatory service. Right.
Well, how did you get interested in, and by the way, what's the connection with our good friend Sam Delgado, who was a key player? He's been a longtime friend of ours and a great guy. And tell us the connection here.
I think when I began fundraising for this film, it took me 9 years to do this documentary for no salary. And Sam Delgado, who is a retired U.S. Marine major.
Yeah, we've always talked about that part of his life. This was important to him, too.
Of course. His grandfather was a doughboy from World War I, although I think he had some uncles that served in the 65th Infantry Regiment. He heard about a fundraiser we had done in New York. And of course, he contacted us, and he did his own fundraiser in his home, and over the years supported us. In fact, we had our NJN, our world premiere was at the Newark Museum, our world premiere, and then NJN had a live pledge program supported by Verizon.
Well, you know what's interesting about that is that NJN is our public television partner, along with the PBS station in New York, and now you're here with Comcast and the CN8. And our viewing audience, a very large audience, all the way up in Maine and down to the D.C. area. And when Sam and I talked about this, we thought it was an important story to tell. You know, as I was looking at this story and I was thinking about it, and by the way, we have a couple more clips from the documentary, one of the things that struck me is that it took 9 years to make this movie. Because? Was it about money?
Money. It didn't
so you had this dream?
Oh, yeah, it didn't take me 9 years to do research. I mean, once word got out, I mean, there was no research when I began. I contacted the Center for Military History, and I got referrals of Korean War historians who had written the history of the Korean War. They had never heard of the 65th.
Never heard?
Never heard of the 65th.
What do you mean never heard? They're an official part of the military, but no one heard of them.
No, there were historians who had written books about the history of the Korean War. And
they were not included?
They were not included. They had never heard of them. Well, I don't know why. I mean,
why do you think?
I don't know. I can tell you that that is what motivated me to make this film, that I felt they were unsung heroes, that they had not gotten their recognition, and that many people had not heard of them, including Puerto Ricans raised in Puerto Rico. I myself grew up in New York. I had never heard of the 65th, and I thought that's a shame, and that's what motivated me.
Well, you know what's interesting about this is that for African Americans, there are certain military heroes whose stories wound up being told. Now it's terrible because I'm drawing a blank. Guys in the control room, if someone remembers this. There's a group, there were fighter pilots.
Tuskegee Airmen.
The Tuskegee Airmen. And that story would not have been told if it were not for African American artists, people like yourself, producers, writers, directors, who went out, raised the money, and did. And I thought, this is similar, that there are too many stories that are powerful and important in our nation's history that aren't told because those who are the heroes and the heroines somehow didn't fall into the mainstream, and we're making too much of that?
No, that's the way it is. I mean, I don't know that the 65th in and of itself even considered itself a segregated unit.
Wait, what do you mean they were only Puerto Rican?
Well, yeah, but every once in a while you would get a Cuban or a Mexican American or a Dominican or, you know.
But they were Spanish speaking?
Yes. And
okay,
I think that
but that
would be
wasn't
the
an
criteria.
accident. I mean, military officials said, let's put those who speak Spanish in the same group.
I think they thought they were Puerto Rican. I know that probably it was to make it easier that they spoke the same language, but the 65th had a lot of Puerto Rican officers as well as continental officers, which is kind of different from the other African American segregated units
Right.
where you had white officers leading black soldiers.
And you went out and talked to them.
I interviewed
How
Puerto
many?
Rican 275 officers and veterans who served in the 65th Infantry and that live in every state across this United States and in Puerto Rico.
How many, because you just told me that you said one of my vets, right before we get on the air, you said one of my vets just died.
Just yesterday.
How many of them are dead?
In the film, there are 24 that got into the film because we had a lot of footage more than that. And when the film came out, 6 that I know of had already passed away without having seen the finished product.
Never saw it.
Yes, and yesterday I was told about a 7th Lieutenant Colonel Tomás Guffain, a Puerto Rican officer who served in World War II and in Korea, and he passed away. But I'm very happy to say that he got to see the finished product, and we had a screening in Orlando in November, which he attended in his wheelchair, and he was ecstatic.
As were you.
As was I.
And we are ecstatic to show another clip. We have 2 more clips from the Borinqueneers. And Noemi is proud, and we're proud to have her with us. Let's take a look at the clip.